All right, welcome back. Now, back in May, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics revealed that 30.5% of Kenyan households were unable to pay rent. It was the ripple effect of strained finances of most Kenyans hit hard by the pandemic. All changes in the rental market saw tenants downsize or leave the city altogether, while in some cases landlords offered reprieve by lowering rents. Now, 6 months on, how are Kenyans faring? Joining me now are Mary Mulwa, CEO of NW Realite, who deals primarily in commercial properties. She'll be the voice of the landlords and property managers in tonight's discussion. We also have Philip Sambu, a public relations executive who made the decision to pack up and start afresh upcountry after losing his job. And we have Ken Rutere, a property lawyer at Igeria and Ngugi Advocates, and he'll be navigating us through the legal grounds. Philip, let me bring you in. You decided to make that change and move up country. You've been there about a week. So, what happened in that transition?
Yeah, basically, so what happened was that about mid last month, now my employer told me that they weren't able now to have me on board, and due to the effects caused by the pandemic. So the moment I got the news, now I realized I wouldn't be able now to stay in Nairobi without a steady income. So I made the hard decision now to just tell my property manager that I'll have to serve a notice. So I handed in my letter. Then then the month passed, and then now I'm here up country.
Now, was moving up country the last resort for you, or is it something that you said was a no-brainer? I just need to go back home.
Actually, yeah. Okay, I had a few options which I thought. I actually thought about asking the property manager for for a waiver and all that. Although I realize now, even now with a waiver, the rent arrears will keep accruing over time. And then also, then also, I won't be sure if I'll get a job later on or not. So I decided now to just take the safe route now. I just go up country, then I'll see what I can do there until now the economic situation stabilizes.
Right.
Then now I can explore my my options then.
Okay, Mary, let me bring you in because you run a company that are basically property managers for commercial properties. What has this season been like for your clients?
Victoria, thank you for having me on. We have had quite a challenge from the time people are told to stay at home. Our occupancy, physical occupancy went down to about 10%. The people are coming into the buildings, and as a result, a lot of companies had to close for a period of time before they came back on. A lot of staff had to go on half pay, some were laid off. But now the situation is normalizing slowly. But what happened is that as a result of people staying at home and not being able to do business, and the disruption was very sudden, a lot of the tenants were not able now to raise the rents as they were normally raising. And also putting into perspective that we were already coming from a depressed market condition, a lot of people were already having challenges because last year was a year that was also a bit down. And then now we come into COVID, so we've had to face a situation of a lot of tenants asking for rent waivers, rent rebates, and rent holidays. And we've had to just navigate and negotiate and also advise on what should happen. So, some of the tenants have had to get waivers, some of the tenants have gotten rebates, and some have gotten holidays. What that means is that some have gotten forgiveness of rent, some have gotten a percentage forgiveness of rent, those are the rebates,
right.
And some have been allowed to pay slowly as opposed to their quarterly or monthly payments. Those are the holidays.
Okay. And Ken, we've heard from Philip in terms of what he had to do, Mary in terms of the concessions she's made for clients, in terms of rent holidays, if you will, but there's nothing really guiding this period or this process in terms of what a landlord and tenant should do in the event of a pandemic? I mean, in most countries, you've seen some governments give some support to landlords and tenants as well in terms of rent help. We've seen that in the US and the UK as well. But however, here in Kenya, we haven't really had anything to guide this process. So what should happen? Because it appears that tenants really are at the mercies of the landlord in terms of getting some reprieve.
At the mercy, it's parties. When you come together and enter into a lease, it's a contract that the both parties have entered into, which means that one party is going to actually occupy the building, and is one other party and they're going to pay rent. And the best thing for guys to do, and what we've seen guys coalesce, and I think Mary has touched on it, is that you've seen, like most landlords have seen, look, instead of having my house vacant or having it vacant for the next few months, we will actually give a rental reprieve, allow guys to just pay as their cash flows come in, and which has really helped in terms of ensuring that businesses stay afloat, guys are able to still live and have somewhere to live. But yes, you're right, there's no legal regime. The government has not come in to give any guidance on what is how exactly we're supposed to treat these situations. We've even seen some landlords kick people out, but which they rightfully have done out of from a legal perspective. But I think personally is that we've seen more landlords actually come into agreements. The parties agree that probably we're going to do half rent, we're going to do 75%, we're going to allow you to pay it in bits and chunks so that you're able to get to a point where you still have your property occupied and you still have your tenants, because this too shall pass.
And I mean, you broker a lot of these agreements between landlords and tenants. So, how would you advise them if they come to you saying, we don't know how to craft an agreement during this time? Because I guess the assumption is we'll lower rent for now because we need someone at least occupying the space, and then we'll discuss how you pay later on. I mean, is that what most are doing now?
I think, Victoria, first thing that we have noticed is that this is a pretty new aspect of that's never been experienced before by any landlords or any. So there's no really roadmap or at least any set rules that we've been following. It's been treated on a case-by-case basis based on how badly has the business been affected by this COVID-19 issue. And taking that into consideration, then we now craft an ideal situation where you have a win-win situation for both the landlord and the tenant. Of course, we are not always successful, but I think most of the time, with a little understanding from both parties, we are able to actually craft agreements and broker some transactions that are able to at least ensure that both parties gain something during this period.
And Philip, let me bring you in, because I was seeing reports of moving companies saying that over the last 4 months, they've seen an increase in people wanting their services. Very many people moving from what they call mid-level estates to cheaper neighborhoods. When you talk to, your friends and family, are they considering, what you did, going up country, or they're just simply downsizing? What have you seen?
Yeah, okay, I've seen a bit of both. Some people are downsizing, some people moving up country. If you look at my former residence, since the pandemic hit, every month since, at least 2 of my neighbors, have been moving out every month. 2 of my neighbors. So it's when I talk to them now, some are either going up country, some are downsizing and all that. Yeah, so it's been a tough period enough for everyone. Yeah.
And how have you been keeping yourself occupied in terms of coming up with income-generating activities while you're there?
Yeah, well, so I've been here for a week, so I'm still piecing things together, looking at various options. Okay, I'm lucky, the fact that my family has a farm, so I'm actually thinking about, utilizing that. Also, the bit of project here at home that I'm thinking of working on. So hopefully that will generate some income in the near future.
Absolutely. Mary, the conversation oftentimes when we look at rent, the focus is on the tenants and the burden that they bear if they can't pay. But oftentimes we forget that landlords and property managers have expenses, they have obligations. During this time, what have you had to incur? What are some of the challenges in that area?
Victoria, what you will notice, some of the property expenses do not go away just because there is a challenge. A landlord had a mortgage. What we had to do is to probably talk to the banks and try and restructure. But we were only given about 3 months, and then we had to start making the payments. So these are recurrent expenditures that the landlords had not foreseen were going to be interrupted. We came into a situation also, and then we had to start sanitizing the buildings. We had to start doing more cleaning. So we had to get more detergent, we had to get more disinfectants, we had to get more cleaners. We had to provide sanitizers for all the people in the workspaces, to provide masks for people working in the buildings. And all these are going into the service charge expenses that were not budgeted for earlier on in the year. And you will have to also provide hand wash stations, and you have to fog the buildings, you have to provide the thermogans. All these things are things that we are even coming to learn as we navigate and as we get the Ministry of Health guidelines, so that we can comply, and also so that our tenants can feel safe and all the occupants of the building. So what you will notice that some of these expenses are actually going up as the incomes are going down.
Right. I mean, and you mentioned some of the measures you had to take in terms of trying to stay afloat, even having to take a loan or ask for some concessions from the bank. Ken, when it comes to landlords, property managers who solely rely on rental income, what are the options out there for them, especially when you can't help it? Your tenant says, I can't afford it, I have to leave. What are their options, especially if there's no fund, there's no support from the government side to help keep them afloat?
Mm-hmm. I think Mary has touched on some of them. One is just seeking some bridging financing to just ensure that you survive this small period. Yeah. So that if you have a bank that actually supports you, will actually get an opportunity to push through and get some finances to at least take care of your base minimums. Second thing we've seen is that most landlords are starting to just do away with any non-essential expenses. So you cut down on your expenses, and of course touch on the very things that you can do without. Probably guys are doing a little less marketing, guys are doing a little less, like we've seen places where they've cut down on the number of days that they clean the places. So just to bring down the cost and make sure that you can tide over this period. But of course, we've also seen extreme situations whereby guys have been forced to now start laying off people, which again now is a ripple effect, meaning that there are guys without an income, and guys who are now proceeding to actually now also will be in probably Philip's position where they have no income. But most guys are just doing really just either some financing from the bank, or number two is that you now start cutting off your non-essential expenses that you can actually do without.
And what's the knock-on effect of this happening right now? If you're seeing lowering of rents, people leaving neighborhoods because they're downsizing, when you're looking down the road, what's going to happen?
Well, I think with any recession, the ripple effect usually takes up. It carries on for a period of time, because when you're looking at lower incomes, fewer people spending, fewer people actually putting in money in non-essentials and only essential issues, which means that some industries will actually take a very big beating, which we will see probably later on when the country now starts to actually open up completely. So what that will mean that there are some industries that will have to just come up again, just start building up, and people also now building up reserves, or rather have depleted their reserves, or rather. So you'll see guys a bit more frugal going forward. And that, of course, affects spending. Of course, it means that the lower spending means less growth in the economy and all these things.
And Philip, during this time, what have you sort of learned during this period? I'm sure you never envisioned that you'd be in the position that you're in now. A lot of people have been hit as hard or even worse than you have. But what have you learned in this time?
hit. I mean, like there's a quote from a character from Game of Thrones that has played in my head. You know, chaos is a ladder. You know, so basically, like what that means basically now, despite all the misery being brought about by the pandemic, I mean, like it's an opportunity for us to readjust. You know, then now to find a way of like, you know, how to go about life. You know, how to recalibrate. So, you know, so to speak. So basically, sort of learn just to be prepared for anything. You know, put in place structures now to help you absorb the shock and, you know, to absorb the shock and everything. Yeah. So basically, that's the harsh lesson you know, that I've learned also. Now also making sure that my finances are in check as well. So at least now I don't have to, you know, struggle as much during such periods.
Right. If you could just repeat that quote again, what was that?
Chaos is a ladder.
Oh, chaos is a ladder. Very interesting. And let me get you, Mary. In terms of the future of the rental market post-COVID-19, you know, we were seeing several corporates telling their people you can work at home. And so the question arises, do you need to rent office space anymore since people can work remotely? Do you think this will affect commercial properties moving forward?
I think at some level the train has left the station. The work from home culture will last for some people, but I don't think that the bigger corporates will be adapting to that as fast as we would. Probably also not the government circles, because we've also encountered people having challenges providing the gadgets required to have these connections, providing the systems, providing internet, because the coverage was not as good. But we are already having conversations that houses should be built with a work area so that you're not having a Zoom meeting and children are crying in the background. So I think at some level, the work from home culture is going to be here to stay. But I also do not think that we'll be able to make that shift so suddenly, because a lot of people, as it were right now, have already started coming back to the offices, and there is a conversation on how to accommodate the people and to have social distancing in the office. However, in as far as possible, digitization is already starting to take place. So I would expect that in the future, probably in about 3-5 years, we will have more and more people opting to work from home or work from the satellite areas nearer home, because we've also learned that you actually do not necessarily need an office in Nairobi town. So people may opt to work nearer where they live so that they also do not have to grapple with issues traffic.
Right.
And because of connectivity also, we've also learned that you can actually do business without necessarily having meetings as we were used to, because right now we are able to transact like we are already having this conversation without having to physically interact.
Absolutely. And Ken, last question goes to you, because we've been seeing calls from government saying stop evictions during this time. However, there are concerns that, you know, we might see an eviction crisis of sorts, or an influx of evictions after the pandemic passes. Is that likely to happen here, and what should be done?
Well, I think first, the government should have probably put in place legislation or something of the sort in order to ensure that these are directives that they're giving that really don't have any legal backing. Because you're just requesting landlords to be understanding, first and foremost. Let's just so that by the time that someone is behind on rent, the government was asking you not to actually kick them out. But what we've seen is that, yes, there might be a big, once pandemic passes, you'll see a lot of people who've been behind on rent, and they're back. Guys, as landlords will also, like Mary has said, also have expenses, have facilities in place, and they'll be forced to actually get new tenants who are able to pay for the space that they are going to be occupying. So that is going to be one of the things that we'll probably see. I think also issues of not only the rental market, even the mortgages as well, because guys will have lost some. There are people, the significant number of people who've lost their jobs, who will actually not be able to make their mortgage payments and all these things. So yes, we will see an influx probably of more vacancies, or at least and a lot of people and a lot of landlords actually coming into distress and take things so that they're able to sell and recover some of the rent. So that is a possibility that we're going to be seeing going forward.
All right. Ken, Mary, Philip, thank you so much for your time. And of course, it's a conversation that we'll keep having as long as this pandemic persists. Thank you so much for watching. That does it for Citizen Weekend. I'm Victoria Rubadiri. Our sign language interpreter tonight has been Wilson Mushora. Stay tuned, though. One Love coming up next.
Indigestion and heartburn? Eno gets to work in 6 seconds and works on the 6 symptoms of heartburn so you can keep living life non-stop. Eno, fight heartburn and indigestion fast.